Hi, thank you for joining us here today. My name's Danielle Buckley, coaching and consulting psychologist, and I'm here today with David Shillington, ex-NRL player and state of mind advocate for the NRL. We're here today to talk about creating a healthy state of mind for you and your workplace, and we're going to be exploring a little bit about mental health, mental illness, and how you can support yourself and those around you. As we move through the session today, I'd really encourage any questions that you have just to be typed in the chat box, and we'll try and get to them throughout the session, or if not, at the end of the session. If there's questions that we don't get to, please keep them up there and we'll make sure that we answer them at a later stage. All right, welcome, David.
Thanks for having me.
One of the things I want to start off with for the webinar today is just to sort of set the scene about what do we mean when we talk about mental health and mental illness, and what is a mentally healthy state of mind. And I guess we want to set the scene by thinking about mental health as something that's on a continuum. So on one end of the spectrum, we've got mental illness, and on the other end, we've got mental health. And when we think about common mental disorders like anxiety, depression, they're at one end. And mental health is at the other end. And positive mental health is things like wellness and flourishing. And in today's session, we want to really unpack what it means to be on that spectrum, and that wherever you are on that spectrum, there's things that you can do, really simple things in many cases, to move towards the healthier end. And also with Dave's expertise, we're going to talk about some of the benefits of digging deep and starting to move along that spectrum. But we're also going to talk about how to help others when it comes to recognising some of the signs and symptoms of whether somebody's going okay or whether they might just need a little bit of intervention and referring onwards. So let's start with why this matters and looking at some of the statistics with mental illness in Australia. In Australia, we've got around 3 million Australians living with anxiety or depression. And so this is certainly something that we want to address and help you address, whether you're listening today as a parent or an employer or a father, a mother, a partner, a friend. This relates to absolutely everyone. And I think this is one of the most important conversations that we can start to have. And we also know that 1/4 of Australians will experience an anxiety condition in their lifetime. So again, this is at the mental illness side of the scale. And so even if you're not feeling unwell at the moment, understanding what this means and understanding more about this kind of conversation and how you can help others is going to help you or someone you know at some point in your life. We know that 1 in 6 Australians are currently experiencing depression or anxiety or both, and that females are more likely than males to experience depression and anxiety. We also know that suicide is a major public health issue that kills more than 3,000 Australians in a typical year. And again, if we look at the difference between males and females, we know that men are 3 times more likely to die by suicide than women. And this is a figure we really feel passionate about changing and influencing the conversation around mental health and mental illness. Sadly, we also know that suicide is a leading cause of death for Australians aged between 15 and 44. Some pretty scary statistics in that slide there. Dave, what's your experience with dealing with mental illness and mental health?
Yeah, so the last couple of years since I retired from playing professional rugby league, I've been delivering the NRL's State of Mind program. So thanks to the governments in each state and some federal support as well, we get to travel around to junior football clubs, and we deliver a 4-step program that's called the State of Mind program. That includes an education session where we talk about signs and symptoms of mental ill health, avenues to get support for yourself and how to support other people. And then we do a thing called a mental health action plan, which is really specific for every club, where we identify areas we can support that club, initiatives they want to take in this space, and support them moving forward. So I love the program. It's got a real positive social impact, and it's nice to do something meaningful.
I love the sound of the program too. So tell me, when you go into these settings and you meet with these kids, how receptive are they to have someone like you come in and have this conversation?
Well, I must say it does have its challenges initially. We're talking about mental health, and some people can naturally be standoffish about that and think, look, it doesn't apply to me, or it's just a bit uncomfortable for me to engage with. But once we get them in the room, you just see people relax and really enjoy it. And by the end of it, They can't speak highly enough of it. They say, more people need to hear this. We hope you get around to more people, because the program has a lot of lived experience stories in there from our NRL State of Mind advocates. So we're talking people like Darius Boyd and Joel Thompson, Dan Gagai, who they're playing for their state. They play for Australia. They play in the NRL. They're tough guys. We respect them, but they're also talking about the struggles they've had as well. We're talking about how they put their hand up, recognised that struggle, and got the help that they needed. So I think when people hear that and hear the rawness of it, the realness of people they really respect, they just relax and they breathe out, and they get more comfortable having that conversation. So that's a big aim of the program, is just to normalise the conversation, destigmatise it, encourage those help-seeking behaviours.
And as you make a really good point about normalising the conversation, because I think if you asked any parent, any employer, any coach what they want to see from their team or the people that they love or their friends, it's they want them to be happy, they want them to be confident, they want them to know who they are and be resilient. And all of those things are the benefit of having positive mental health. And as you say, positive mental health is not something that we just wake up and have. There's a whole skill set that we can develop, and that you're working with youth today to develop. And that not only enhances their education or their skill on the field, but it enhances their life. And we know that some of the positives of mental health, so some of the payoffs that you get from investing in having these conversations and learning these skills, are improved relationships with others. We see overall just feeling better and thinking more clearly, better health outcomes. So for an employer, there's far less physical sickness in an office when people are experiencing high levels of wellbeing. Again, we have the same statistic when it comes to youth at school, showing up to school more often, being more resilient and being able to bounce back faster from setbacks, just being better to be around. And I mean, I think your experience as a team member, what does it feel like when the team's on fire and the team's doing really well? Can you capture that emotion for me?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is it's contagious and it's energising. So I think when a couple of boys are going well, and especially the senior guys, and they really pump up the younger, less experienced guys, a bit more unsure of themselves. It's contagious, spreads throughout the group, and everyone's positive and on the front foot with a bit of spring in their step. So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I can see that. I would imagine, it's the same when you're in a work setting, when you're in any kind of team environment. When we're at our best, we're all thriving. And this is all positive mental health. This is the stuff we want to help you be able to achieve, whether you're, an employer, a parent, in a relationship. We want you to feel more happy, you feel more satisfied with life, more creative, better at problem solving, and having improved performance in whatever realm that you do. So they're really some of the benefits and the payoffs, I guess, that we can all experience by investing in having mental health and positive mental health. So again, over to you. You do this in the community now, and you are an ex-player. I want to know, in your opinion, why is it so important to invest in mental health, and why do the NRL care about it so much?
Yes, the NRL made a really, really big investment in all the playing group a few years ago. And I think they're just recognising that, look, you have to be really physically fit to play in the NRL. But playing in the NRL, it's a roller coaster from time to time. You have setbacks like poor form, injuries. You have criticism from the general public. There's not many jobs in the world where you are more critiqued from different angles. It's internally with the team, the coaching staff. It's externally with fans, media, family and friends. And these days with social media, it's really amplified as well. People who don't necessarily know you, they can be faceless. They can be pretty harsh on social media. So players have a lot to deal with in that respect. And so we can be physically fit, but the NRL want to make sure that players are mentally fit as well. And so we did a lot of education around mental health skills. We learned new things around gratitude and mindfulness and empathy, the 3 tools of resilience to make us grow stronger and handle setbacks a whole lot better. And to be honest, the NRL did things like that from time to time over the years I was in the system, but nothing had more of a profound effect than this time. So it was great to see, and I know the players learnt new skills that they have as their daily routine now today, years on and moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, you're preaching to the converted here because as a psychologist, everything we do is from a scientist practitioner approach. So, you know, we look at the latest science and we say, you know, this is what we need to use in practice now. Yep. And obviously, for some time, we've known the importance of investing in positive thinking strategies and investing in having a healthy mind and a high level of well-being as a pathway to performance. Yep. But you touched on something before around social media, and you know, I want to hear from your experience, because I'm sure a lot of students and young people would go through this, but you will have experienced it at an extreme level. Have you ever been in a situation where you got some feedback, maybe on social media or through word of mouth, or you found something out about yourself that somebody had said that perhaps wasn't true?
Yep.
I want to know what that might have felt like for you as someone in an elite situation. What did it feel like?
Yeah, I actually learned from a pretty young age to try and not engage in those sort of platforms. Yeah. And I had a couple of different stints trying social media because it's got its obvious benefits. Yeah. And people were always encouraging me, you got to get on it, you tell your story and connect with the fans and businesses. And but from a young age, I remember we used to, as players, sometimes we'd check the fans' chat forums and things like that and see, what are they saying about me, just out of curiosity. It wasn't a vanity thing or anything like that. It's just you wanted to know if they respected you and they liked the way you played. Yeah. And yeah, they say some pretty harsh things on there. And the reality is a lot of people chatting on those sites, they're faceless, they don't know you, they probably might not be qualified to speak about your performances, and it shouldn't really matter to you as well. But while it's nice to know those things, that it shouldn't matter to you, it still does affect you a whole lot, and it makes you second guess your performances or your worth for the team and the respect you might have from fans. So I find that at a young age to not just to really ignore those things, don't go looking for it, and don't put yourself out there on social media. And not everyone's going to follow that advice, of course. 3/4 of the NRL are probably on social media, and 3/4 of the population are probably as well. But I'll probably just say treat it wisely, and just remember that they're not the people whose opinions you should care about. Yeah. They're people like your family and friends and some of your colleagues. They're the people that really matter, not faceless people on social media.
Yeah, that's good advice. But I think it's something that will really hit home for a lot of the people listening, and certainly also something that if someone's already not doing okay, you know, and they're questioning maybe their self-belief or how they show up in the world, or they're feeling anxious or stressed, finding out something that someone said that's not true can sometimes really impact that.
I think that's one of the first things I would recommend if I was giving advice to someone in the public profile, with a public profile. If you're an NRL player and you're doing it tough, switch off from social media.
Absolutely.
Give it a break.
Absolutely.
Because it can be overwhelming. Some people say they have 100,000 followers. How many of those people do you think are going to be respectful on average? And how many of those people are your actual friends on average? So just have a little break and take care of yourself and focus on the things that matter.
We actually have a rule in our house when it comes to my son, who's starting to learn about using technology at school. He's still only little. And we spoke to him about it, and we said to him, you know, the rule is that anything you write anywhere, if you think that your mother, your father or your school principal aren't going to be okay with that conversation, that's not one to write.
That's right, yeah.
You know, so making sure, because you pointed out about the faceless part, and I think that's, you know, such a key part to social media. People are faceless, so they're happy to say whatever hurtful comments they can say, and I think for people listening, it's important for young people listening that, you know, you don't need to believe that to be true.
That's right.
It's just a comment. So moving on, what stigma or barriers do you think still exist when it comes to mental health and mental illness?
I think particularly playing professional sport, you have to be so physically capable and imposing, I guess, that there's a stigma around having mental health difficulties, that you might be soft or weak, and you might not have that physical ability that you'd normally have. So I think players would feel ashamed of that a little bit sometimes, and think that it detracts from their performances on the training paddock or on the field. If say they do admit they're suffering from a bit of depression, they might be a bit cautious that their teammates or their coach might not think they're going to perform that weekend. And also thinking about the coach and the CEO, those sorts of people, they're the decision makers. They select the team each week. They decide whether to renew your contract or to sign you from another club. So I think a lot of players would naturally want to keep that stuff to themselves, so it doesn't adversely affect any of those sort of decisions. So, and one of the things I love about the NRL State of Mind program is the advocates we have, like the Michael Morgans and the Darius Boyds. They played State of Origin, and most sporting fans believe State of Origin is the toughest sporting arena in Australia, maybe the world, who knows. And if those guys are talking about their struggles, and supposedly it's weak to talk about your struggles, I don't think that really matches up.
Yeah.
So as we saw by those stats, mental health difficulties doesn't discriminate.
Yeah.
People from all walks of lives. You can be ultra successful or you can be battling. And these guys, they're ultra successful they're tough guys. So I think them talking about their struggles helps reframe that whole conversation around mental health.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things we need to be really mindful of, and you bring your experience from the field and now in the community as well. And my experience working in an organisational setting and in private practice is that in many cases, men seem to wait till things get really bad before they say something. And I think, you've highlighted probably one of the reasons why their fear of speaking up, or this perception that men need to be strong and therefore it's weak to say something. But we need to break down that barrier, and we need to get everyone, but men particularly, thinking that the same investment they make in healthy body, exercising, going to the gym, healthy food, we need to put that same mindset into our mind, and know that by saying, hey, I need a bit of help, or, I'm not feeling my best self today, or when somebody says to you, are you okay? Saying, actually, I'm not, is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it's a sign of strength, and it's a sign of the ability to speak up and say, I want to know more about how I can fix this, because we know that pretty much most psychological illnesses, if you have a psychological illness, anxiety, depression, it's all fixable. We can treat it. And not only, I always say that when people come to see me or people see a psychologist, I always think you're giving somebody a gift for life. Because not only are you helping them through a situation or treating an illness, and you might want to see a psychologist because you're suffering some stress at the moment, or you want to improve your performance a bit, but you get to teach people skills that last a lifetime. And I love that.
Well, it definitely resonates with me, because the training we did with the NRL around learning new mental health skills, that's a part of my life now, for the rest of my life. That's a life skill I think we should all have, and certainly the playing group that I was with at that time, it is for them. And some of the skills we did, the boys were quite sceptical at first. Almost no one had tried these things before, but a simple thing like practicing gratitude, which we know is great for our resilience, makes us recognise the good things we've got going in life quite easily, rather than focusing on the negative things. And now at training, a lot of boys in the NRL throughout all different teams get to the locker rooms, pull down a gratitude journal off the top shelf in their locker, and just fill out 3 things they're grateful for today. And doing that every day, it just retrains the brain to focus on the positive things.
Absolutely.
You're not blocking out the negative things and pretending everything's okay. But generally speaking, you're more aware of positive things, so that when there is a setback, it's not as big a setback. So practicing gratitude is definitely a daily practice, and mindfulness too. I know it was quite funny when the trainers announced that we were going to do mindfulness practices after our field sessions moving forward, because most of the boys hadn't heard that word before and didn't know what it involved. And when they brought it in, the routine was we had a 2 to 3 hour field session where after that we'd have stretching, ice bath and shower, and then go up for lunch. But then they stopped us and took us to a function room before lunch, and they made us all lay down on our backs, close our eyes, dim the lights, and they put on a 10-minute guided meditation.
Wow. Just
so we can unwind. It was just talking us through our breath and just relaxing our muscles and unwinding. And the boys thought it was a bit of a joke, and there's a few giggles and laughs, and not a lot of boys took it seriously. But a few boys did, and they felt pretty good after it. And so much so that the next day they rushed through their showers and ice baths so they can get to the function room a little bit quicker. And a few more boys joined them, and all of a sudden the whole squad were doing it. And it felt so good for them doing it, learning to unwind and relax, because normally they're quite uptight and tense from all the competitiveness and the stress. And then taking that at home at night too. So it's a positive sort of skill you can have rather than relying on a glass of red wine or some sleeping tablets to switch off at night. You can unwind through meditation and get a good night's sleep. So.
And I love that. And I think, one of the things about that scientifically is, as you pointed out, our mind zooms in on the bad. So bad is stronger than good.
Yep.
And our neural pathways love those bad connections. So we actually have to fight really hard to see when something's going well and see the positive in a situation.
Yep.
And also, what people might not realise is when we do mindfulness and when we engage in that off moment, it actually it puts our body into that rest and digest phase and calms our body down, and it allows our body to go back to neutral and recalibrate. So the brain doesn't stop working during that time. And so embedding those practices gives us a whole lot of recovery that we need in this crazy busy world, whether we're on the field having had a huge game or a huge training session, but also if you're in the workplace after a stressful day, trying to incorporate those sort of practices. Really, there's a lot of science around it, and it works.
Absolutely,
So as you said, we can train our brain to think differently, and you've shared some great examples from your life and, your role as a player and what you do in the community now. But I guess there's a lot of people that will probably be wondering, if someone's not doing so well, I mean, what do they look for? How do you spot those signs? So I guess for me, some of the really important signs, symptoms and signals that we need to spot when people might not be their best self or need a conversation or a referral is probably a lack of interest or pleasure in things they normally enjoy. So quite often we see social withdrawal for people who are having some difficulties. And again, you might think about a friend, for example, who all of a sudden say no to catching up all the time, and or somebody who used to get a lot of enjoyment out of the gym or running, no longer wanting to do those things. I think we also see a feeling of helplessness or hopelessness in somebody, so maybe overly negative. And the helplessness is also, just not helping themselves, right? Not sticking to their routine and maybe having a change in their sleeping patterns, or, as you pointed out, turning to things like the glass of red wine or the sleeping tablets at night. We also often see, and this is quite visible in the workplace, is personal hygiene changes. So people not showering as frequently, coming to work, with crinkled clothes or just looking really untidy. Also the slouched over shoulders. I was speaking to somebody this week and they were talking about having had this conversation with somebody after somebody just sort of, every time they looked, they were just sort of staring into space. And I think looking at those physical signs and symptoms is also really important.
I know when I was playing at the Roosters way back in the day, I'm getting old now, so it's a little bit winding back the clock, but my coach at the time, he noticed some of those signs and symptoms in me, just being a bit withdrawn, keeping to myself. And he approached me one day after training and said, Dave, have you ever thought about seeing a professional, like a counsellor, a psychologist? I noticed you haven't been yourself. And at first, I was a bit defensive, to be honest. I was 6'5", 115 kilo front rower for the Sydney Roosters, so I thought I'm all sorted.
I've got it.
Yeah, that's right. But we all know as some of those triggers, I guess. People have family problems, relationship issues, all sorts of things that can trigger those things. So whilst you might look like or feel like you've got life sorted sometimes, there are other things that happen to all of us as well. And that was definitely the case for me. So I was a bit defensive at first, but then he said to me, no, well, it's not a big deal. You should go see the guy that I see. I was like, you see a guy? Wow, I thought you had life sorted. Well, if it's good enough for you, then it's probably good enough for me as well. And I went and saw a lovely bloke called Angus. He lived around the corner in Centennial Park. And I was still a little bit apprehensive about it now, being a young man. And I went into his place and sat on the couch, as you do traditionally. And he's like, what are you here for today, Dave? What do you want to chat about? I was like, nothing, thanks, man. I'm pretty good. And then he goes, well, you wouldn't be here if you were. But I definitely put up a bit of a block, and I wasn't really keen to chat. But he used some sort of witchery or sorcery, I don't know.
Science.
Yeah, so he kept reframing questions, and he got me talking, and after a while, I couldn't stop talking. To be honest, it just felt good just to let it out of what was going on.
Getting out of your head, right?
Yeah.
Getting out of your head, and I think one of the benefits of that is you get out. You speak about it, and somebody else can help you reframe and repackage it, and then pop it all back in.
Definitely.
Much more organised.
Yeah, and when you talk it out, I mean, you can turn it over in your head for days and weeks and years and not make any progress. But as soon as you talk it out, things just fall into place for you.
Yeah.
And if you're talking to somebody who's experienced, like Angus was, and like yourself, then they can help you reframe, repackage it, and send it back there. So for someone who didn't want to talk to Angus, all of a sudden he was tapping his watch going, all right, Dave, I've got to see other people. I'll see you later. And I was like, wait, I've got more to say. So
see you next week.
Yeah, so I saw him maybe 6 times over the next few months that season. And I don't think it was any surprise the next year of rugby league for me. I got to kick on, and I played representative football and enjoyed some of the best years of my career. And
you were really successful.
Yeah, well, I think making that investment into my mental health, into my emotional well-being, it just partnered well with the physical well-being you're already experiencing, and combined it made me play my best footy and really enjoy life.
Yeah. And that's it's such a great story, and it's a courageous story to share as well, because it really shows the benefits of saying, you know what, I'm curious, I want to learn a bit more on how I can have a really healthy state of mind. And there's so many skills that we can all learn just about perceptions. Right? About thinking skills, about resilience, about when something goes wrong, how do we process it? How do we move forward with that? How do we view ourselves? And all of those things coupled together make a really positive, healthy state of mind. I think, as you've pointed out, when we can get into that state, we excel. We excel. You only have to look at the likes of most, as you pointed out, most elite sports people. They seek these services because we know that they work. So, as you were saying, some of the things you would have experienced, and when we are at our best and we are flourishing and we do have that healthy state of mind, we have more positive emotions. We have more interest in the things that we do. We have better relationships. We feel a greater sense of meaning and purpose. And I think, I heard in what you were saying, it comes through in a drive. A drive for success, a drive for the next thing. And when you experience a setback, it's not a catastrophe, it's a learning opportunity. So you get that ability to say, all right, okay, how can I do this differently next time, instead of, I'm such a failure, why didn't this happen for me? A sense of accomplishment, we feel more optimistic, resilience, we have higher self-esteem, and feel more vitality, so a sense of feeling energetic by making some of these investments.
Yeah. I think the more you talk about, I know it's a commonly said thing, the more you talk about the problems, the more normal it feels, I guess, for other people. But also you find out just how prevalent those issues are that you're experiencing. Because sometimes you're experiencing things you think, I'm a failure, or I can't do it, and I've got this problem. And then all of a sudden you share it with someone, they go, oh yeah, I've been through that actually. And then you share it with someone else, they go, oh, I've been through that too. And so-and-so struggle with that as well. And so just by simply talking, you realise, hey, I'm not the only one to experience this.
Right.
And there's a bit of comfort, I think, in knowing that other people have been through it too. So you feel like I'm actually normal for going through this.
Absolutely.
And you can learn from them, what worked for you to get you through to the other side. So I can't emphasise talking enough for those reasons.
And I guess, on that point, stress and anxiety is a normal part of life. We all experience it, so just by sharing how it shows up for us in our life, and you can even just learn what other people do to cope with those situations, and that's so helpful in every single life. And I think if we, taking that experience and we apply it to employers and young people who are starting work, and, there's some pretty harsh statistics out there at the moment with young people and what they're feeling. And, I would love to challenge employers to maybe rewind the clock a little bit, like you did today, to think about what was it like for them when they started work? That anxiety of, I'm not doing this well enough, or I'm really tired because I'm not really job fit yet. Or, I'm learning on the job and I don't know if my boss is happy with what I'm doing, and I've got a problem with my girlfriend or my boyfriend, or, there's lots of stresses that we experience in our daily life.
it's one of the things I always cop in the feedback I always receive in the State of Mind program from the adults. From time to time, they say, "Oh, the kids today, they're not resilient," and but I just think, yeah, you have to wind back the clock and think about when you left school, for example, and you had your circle of friends and your level of comfort of being at school, your known surroundings. You go out of that into the workforce or uni, your first serious relationship, first financial problems maybe. You're going to nightclubs, you're drinking and things like that. All these things you haven't got perspective yet on in life. And so it's a tough period when you're 18 to 25. It's tough, and sometimes I think we forget. You throw in actually social media as well. I mean, I've made mistakes on social media, I think, as a 25-year-old, let alone a teenager or a 20-year-old. And a lot of adults never had social media at that age. So throw in social media to all those other normal things in life. And so we really shouldn't forget that it's a really tough period.
It is a really tough period. And, you know, I guess as well, that's why it's so important that we have the courage and the confidence and the competence to, if someone's struggling or someone's not coming up as their best self, just by saying, you know, you're right, like the situation you're in. And, you know, they might be operating at 70%, but hey, who wants to be 70% when we can be 100?
That's right. Yeah, I think of it as in physical training sometimes. So with personal trainers, someone who can use a personal trainer, they might be wanting to shed 50 kilos of body weight, but someone might use a personal trainer to maintain real peak performance as well. So the same thing with mental health, I think, and investing in that side of it. You might be really struggling. You need a lot of help. And other times you might just need a bit of a hand to maintain where you are or just improve a little bit. So no matter where you are in that continuum that you spoke of earlier, I think it's important for all of us. Absolutely.
And so I guess one of the things that people always ask me about is if I notice that somebody maybe isn't their best selves, what do I do? What do I say? How do I have that conversation? So we talked about this before as well. I think something for everybody to know is you're not a psychologist, right? So your job, if you spot this in somebody, your job is not to go and solve their problem for them. Know your level of capability, right? But your job is to recognise that. You know, your job is to say, hey, you know, I've noticed you're not yourself today. Are you okay? Or is everything all right? You know, and I think one of the things I like to talk to employers about is actually getting to know the people that they work with. Because when we all get so busy and stressed at work, it's very easy to come in and do your job and go home. But the more we actually know the people that we work with and the people that are in our community, whatever sort of community that is, the more it's easier to tell if they're not okay or they're not themselves. So I think my first piece of advice is get to know the people that you work with. You know, get to know who's in their family, how do they get to and from work, what are they like? You know, just be able to start that dialogue. And then when somebody is showing up a different way, you have a responsibility to say something. And so the sort of phrase I always say to people is just say, you know, are you okay? I'm here if you need me. I think that's the first line I would recommend. What sort of lines have you heard people say to players or you used yourself?
Oh, I think it's great how we talked about how the landscape's changed a lot, and where you didn't used to be comfortable talking about your emotions and you wouldn't know how to talk about them, and then people wouldn't check on you. But nowadays, all the boys that play, or even my mates today as an older bloke, it's always like, are you okay? How you going? How's things? And would you like to go have a coffee and talk about it? And you're sort of trying to get them into the environment to support that sort of chat. You might not want to do it at a busy bar with lots of people around listening to the conversation. And just, I guess, practicing that skill of listening. I think it's too easy for us sometimes to not listen. We're distracted by our mobiles or from other things going on in our life. We might want to jump in and offer our advice straight away. We might want to hijack the conversation and talk about our own issues. We might want to just tell them to get over it. You'll be right. That's nothing to worry about. So I think just letting people get in that right environment first, letting people lay it all out, offering support where you can. But as you said, we don't have to solve their problems.
Don't have to solve their problems, exactly. And, you know, for employers who are listening today, and I had an employer last week say to me, you know, I know somebody in my team is going through something, but I don't want to overstep the personal boundary, you know, and they haven't really come up to me and said anything. How do I handle that? And so I said, you walk up and you say, I know you've got some things going on. It's okay, you don't have to talk to me about it, but I'm here if you need me. If I can do anything to support you, I'm here if you need me.
Yep.
And I've got some services that I can offer show you for extra support if you want them.
Yep.
And I said, you know, just showing that you know and you're aware and that support is available. If people want to take it, they can take it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think letting them know about employee assistance programs, letting them know that it's okay to not be okay at that time. And depending on the relationship you have with that person, it might not always be the case with employees, but with closer friends, sharing things about yourself.
Absolutely.
So times where you've done it tough and you seek professional support, or you've had some time without alcohol, or you've got some time where you've got back into exercise and you focused on your sleep for a while, and the things you did to help yourself and come out the other side to be doing okay. It's good to share those things and help people let their guard down and tell you their information as well.
And it's so good to share those things, but it's also good that I think we're starting to see a shift in a lot of employment places now, right? So, you know, for teams to be really working well together, it's about having time to have conversations like that.
Yep.
It's about maybe doing sport together or training, doing some exercise together, rather than every team day being around, you know, having a drink on a Friday night or something. So thinking about how the team or the workplace can just shift into some healthy habits.
Yeah.
I think is also really important. And you're actually showing people how to have a healthy state of mind by initiating those sort of healthy habits, right?
Yeah, and sometimes I think the assistance you're giving people can be really subtle. They might not engage with you straight away, and you might not feel like they're getting anything out of it. But sometimes by just letting them know there's support available, or letting them know that you might have had some tough times, or doing an activity at work that brings people together and uplifts the group. They might just get a whole lot out of it that you don't even realise, because we're pretty good at humans of putting on that facade that we're doing fine when we're actually not, or that we're not interested, but subtly we are listening. So I think if we make that effort, it might have a lot more effect than you first think.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, you remind me of a story. So I used to work many, many years ago, I used to work as a female psychologist in an all-boys juvenile detention centre. And there was this one boy that I never got the chance to work with, and he just wasn't interested in seeing me. But I would make an effort every day just to say hello to him. And I got to know his footy team, and I'd get out on the basketball court. That might surprise you because I'm a bit short. Get out on the basketball court and play basketball with the boys and just, you know, have a chat. And he'd been there for a while and still never engaged more than sort of a nod. And the day he was leaving, he sort of put his arm up and he says, like this. And I was thinking, oh no, like, I hope everything's okay. And he said to me, you know, miss, I just want to say thanks for respecting me. And I just, you know, I've never... It's just one of those career moments that's going to last a lifetime with me.
Oh, for sure.
Because, you know, I did care about him. I didn't get a proper conversation ever, but I made sure I said hello every day. And it just was really, really amazing.
I remember chatting to these young early school leavers who are transitioning into the workforce after leaving school, and there's a group of about 12 in the room, so a fairly intimate setting. And I was talking about resilience and things like that, and these two young boys had their heads down the whole time like this, and it looked as though they were drawing or just scribbling or...
Not engaged, right?
And I was up there trying to talk to them, and I remember it was a bit off-putting. I was thinking, oh man, come on, you kids, young people can just at least look at me and listen a little bit, humour me, you know, pretend you're interested. And then when the session finished, we walked over and I was chatting to a few people around them, and I glanced down at the table and I had been taking notes the whole time, detailed notes of everything I was talking about. So I thought,
it's so touching.
I thought these young people couldn't have a care in the world what I was saying, but they took down every detail of it. So.
And that's it, nice. You know. I mean, this is what we do, and you can be quick to judge. You can have your own story going on in your mind about what somebody thinks about you, or, you know, how you're coming across to somebody else. And actually, you are not a mind reader.
Yeah, that's right.
You are not a mind reader, so you don't know. You only ever know if you have the courage to go and ask.
Yep.
you know, and even then it still might not be the exact truth. But so for people that are in that situation, have that conversation. But if you want to know, we've got some information here on where to refer to. And we are so lucky in Australia to have some of the best referral pathways available. Information from the Black Dog Institute is incredible. You can get anything you want off the website. Beyond Blue, Headspace, a free online telephone service supporting young people from 12 to 25 and their families going through a hard time. The Kids Helpline as well is a free private and confidential telephone and online counselling service for kids aged 5 to 25. There's a men's helpline up there, Men's Line, Relationships Australia, and Lifeline, which is 13 11 14. When I started as a psychologist 15, 16 years ago, I did the Lifeline training. And it was still to this day one of the best experiences that I had. These counsellors are so experienced, and the level and depth of training that they have before they can be a counsellor is wonderful. So the great thing about Lifeline as well is that if you're even sitting here listening and thinking, I've got a question, you know, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know where to go to support this person, you can pick up the phone free and you've got advice within a minute.
Yeah. And you make a good point that we probably haven't touched on as much, in that what we're talking about today is not just only about supporting yourself, it's about being a good support person for somebody else.
Absolutely.
And that's been the positive ripple effect, I guess, of what we've been doing with the State of Mind program, or even just educating yourself with the Black Dog Institute website. Then when someone around you is doing it tough, and there's a very high likelihood of that, you can be that support person. You won't be overwhelmed and standoffish and think, oh, so-and-so's doing it tough. I just know what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to ignore it and hopefully they get better. You can actually talk to them, be that point of contact, listen, refer them to get help. So the information and services, it's not just for the people doing it tough.
That's
it's for
exactly
that support
right.
person.
Yeah, and you know, it's amazing, you know, my role as a psychologist, because again, recently I had a client come and see me, and I think I asked about 2 questions at the beginning, and I didn't say another thing for about the next 45 minutes other than, Yeah. All of a sudden, the time's up, and they said, well, thanks very much for that. I feel really good now. I know exactly what I do. I'm going to do. And I thought, wow, okay. You know, and the power of listening, as you said, is just actually phenomenal sometimes. Just giving somebody your undivided attention is the greatest gift you can give any individual. So you don't need to solve somebody's problems, but just giving an ear sometimes is amazing, and familiarising yourself with what education is available. I really hope that before long people start to view mental health the way they do physical health.
Absolutely.
You know, we know what calories we need to put in. We know what good food choices are. We need to have the same attitude when it comes to our mind.
Yeah. And I think, I know myself, since I've retired from playing footy, where we used to train 30 hours per week physically, and we didn't do any sort of mental training till right at the end. And now in retirement, I still want to train, but I have this mental block sometimes, and I don't have to get out of bed and train, so it's a choice to get out of bed. So for me, the more focus I put on things like gratitude and mindfulness, to be positive and upbeat, get a good night's sleep, the more I want to get out of bed and train first thing in the morning, or come home from work and still have the energy to train physically as well. So they go hand in hand in my mind. They
absolutely do, and I think it comes back to your value system, doesn't it? You know, and for all of us, what's important in the way we live our life. You know, for me, it's really important that I am healthy and fit for my children, and for how I show up to work every day. And, you know, part of being healthy and fit and having a high level of well-being is the daily practices that go into that. So, you know, and we spoke before about gratitude and mindfulness, and we've got some additional practices for people listening to start exploring and thinking about in their life. And we know that a brief 10-minute mindfulness meditation every day changes your brain structure. I do this with my children at night. I do it myself as well. And if you're unfamiliar with mindfulness, you can use the Smiling Minds app, which is a free app, and you can just download it and do it at home. The role of compassion as well. Again, this is a great one for the workplace. And compassion is not just about compassion towards others, but self-compassion too. So when something goes wrong, sometimes the internal voice that we say to ourselves is very different to what we would say to somebody else.
Yep.
So challenging that, having that healthy habit where you say, if you failed at something or you haven't done something as well as you would like to, are you telling yourself the same story that you would tell a colleague or a friend or a loved one?
Yep.
And perhaps challenging that. Thinking about positive thinking strategies, we talked a bit about that before. Gratitude, we've talked about. Again, physical activity. There's so much research now about the role of physical activity, and just getting out and being active is so good for your mental health. So I think for anybody sitting at home today thinking, well, what's one thing that I can go away and do? I'm going to say be active.
Yeah, and you can do that in all different ways, whether you want to get up in the morning and go for a run, or you want to take the dog for a walk, or you want to take your lunch break to go for a walk around the park or the beautiful harbour here in Sydney, if that's what you want to do, or you want to play social OzTag on a Monday night. So there's all different ways we can get fit. We don't have to fit that mould of going to the gym and pumping on or slogging out a marathon or whatever it is. So just healthy social ways of keeping active.
Yeah, and the great thing with those examples is, you're getting active, you're getting sunshine, you're getting outdoors, you're connecting with people.
Yep.
You can put your headphones on and do a mindfulness meditation while you walk and sort of kick a few goals at once. But there's really no excuse now.
That's right,
Even if it's getting off at the train station, a stop early to walk to work.
Yeah.
Getting active just gets that blood pumping and really puts us in a good state of mind. Social connections as well. I mean, when was the last time you picked up the phone and sat down with somebody for a coffee or just a chat or a walk and a talk? All of these things make for healthy habits and push us along the end of that continuum to, positive mental health.
Yeah.
Having meaning in life, again, that might be picking up the phone and calling your grandparent or somebody that you haven't spoken to for a long period of time and rebuilding that bridge. Accomplishment, goal striving, and of course the experience of positive emotions. Just doing things that you love is so important. And when we get stressed and anxious, I think sometimes anything that brings us pleasure, they're the things that we stop engaging in.
Yeah. And once again, these are things we can do by ourselves, for ourselves,
Absolutely.
or we can do with other people for ourselves, or other people for them as well. So there's all different angles we can take on that. And things like having meaning in life, letting people around you know that they're important to you or the positive impact they've had on you. I love doing things like that. I know when I retired from the NRL a few years ago, I felt so grateful for having the opportunity and the career that I had. I made a point of contacting people from the past who'd given me an opportunity or given me a piece of advice that might have been an off-the-cuff comment from them. But for me, it meant a whole lot to me. So letting people know that you value them or they've been a positive influence on you, I think is great for you and great for them as well.
Oh, and there's a huge amount of research to back that up. Writing somebody a gratitude letter and saying it to them or, hand delivering it and reading it aloud has some lasting effects on both, the giver and the receiver. And it's such an easy thing to do, isn't it? To show somebody that they've mattered to you and they've made a difference in your life.
I think like a lot of these practices, it's one of those things that might feel uncomfortable at first.
Yeah.
But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get and the better it feels too.
Absolutely.
And it becomes contagious, I think, as well. So.
Oh, it absolutely does. So I want to hear a little bit about what are some of the other healthy habits that you do in your life now?
I think just remembering to do things that are fun and meaningful for you.
Yeah.
So whether it's anything to do with those things we talked about or something different, for me, spending time with my kids or my dog, they're the things that I really love doing, those family sort of activities. So most days we try and get down to the dog-friendly beach near us.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is, but seeing my dog wag his tail, jump around, ears flapping throughout the surf or the sand dunes, that makes me happy. So I like seeing other people happy, doing nice things for them, and that just provides the return for me as well. So if I want to fill in my time, I remember to do things that are I guess, fun and meaningful like that.
I think it's a good reminder for people listening as well that we have to make a conscious choice to be like this.
Yeah.
If we just keep on that treadmill and we keep on that roller coaster of work and to and from work and family and this commitment and that, we can really lose touch of all of these healthy habits that make us a positively, mentally healthy individual.
Yep.
So, one of the things that I like to do as well is to almost have a plan about how am I going to incorporate these things that matter to us in our week, because there's some things for me that are non-negotiables. We're a busy family, but having a family dinner, where there's no devices on tables and we're connecting, we're talking, those things matter.
Yep.
And starting to be active and do physical fitness together. So, you can go for a nice walk with your family and your kids and have a walk and a talk. And it's amazing what comes out when people start, just, talking freely. The other concept I really love, and if people don't know about this yet, is the use of growth mindsets. So, having that phrase, and we've got some posters up in our house, instead of thinking, I'm not good at this yet, or, I failed the first time at this. No, we don't say that. We're going to say, I'm going to train my brain to be good at this. And so there's lots of little things that I think we can all start to do, whether it's at home, at work, or all the places in between, to start having a healthy state of mind.
Yeah. I think the family dinners definitely resonates with me, and I'm one of 4 boys, so Mum was a bit of a machine, working full time and then taking care of us, not just with all the sporting activities we did, but just for putting enough food on the table. They're all just as big as me, those boys, so we all ate a lot. But one thing was a non-negotiable in our house was having family dinners.
Yeah.
And Mum and Dad just really valued us all being able to chat with each other, being up to date what's going on in our lives, being able to talk and be connected. And at times we probably thought, just being teenagers, we couldn't be bothered. We'd rather sit in front of the TV and do that. And we probably thought it was a form of child abuse to not let us watch TV while we had a dinner. But now, later in life, 20 years on, we're all super close, us boys, with each other and with our parents. And I think back to moments like having dinner together, which is pretty simple, that it brought us so close. So, little things like that go a long way.
Yeah, that's right. And, again, whether you're listening at home and if you're thinking, oh, we're never home in time for dinner, dinner's such a stressful time, it doesn't have to be that, but it's a ritual of being together.
Yeah.
It's the talking, and whether that be over breakfast or over lunch or over dinner, but I guess finding times to build that connectedness with the people that you care most about is a really healthy habit that you can start to build in your family.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up in a minute, but before we do, I'd just like to ask the listeners to reflect on a couple of questions. And I think the first one for me is, given what we've spoken about today, what are you going to do differently to invest in your mental health today? I'd really like to challenge everyone. We've shared a lot about our lives, but I'd like to ask everyone to think, what can they do today? What's one thing they can do? Because a lot of the things we spoke about might take 3 seconds or 30 minutes and they're free.
Yeah, I think keeping those changes small, that's the big thing. When people say, oh, I want to lose weight or I want to do this, they often take on too much at once and it's a big shift. So when we're thinking about one thing we can do today, just make it small.
Make it small. It might be going in and actually saying hello, how are you to all the people in your office, right?
Yep.
Making that connection. Also just thinking about how you'll notice if somebody is struggling. And we shared some examples of how people can have that conversation.
Yep.
But also, how will you approach a difficult conversation? What you might say, what you might think. And if it does get hard, remember we've got that list of referral sources out on the slides as well that are available for people.
Yeah.
What do you think one tip is that people can take away from your experience, both as a player now working in this space? What's one thing that you want to leave with people?
I think being open to trying new things.
Yep.
Everyone I talk to about things like gratitude or mindfulness or asking someone if they're okay and being open to hearing the answer. A lot of people are skeptical and that it'll do anything for them or it's worth making the effort. A lot of people are skeptical that if they ask someone are they okay? Will they respond in the right way? Or they might be skeptical if they seek professional help, like I did back in the day at the Roosters. Then it might not help them. It might be a waste of time. So I think just being open-minded, trying something new that's positive for you, all those things we talked about today. If you chip away at them over time, or just choose one thing to work on, just be open-minded and have a go and see how it feels. And give it a chance too. If you practice gratitude one night, you might feel a little bit different the next day, maybe. But if you practice it every night for a week and 2 weeks and 3 weeks, you're going to see a big shift in your mindset. So have a go and give it a chance. Yeah, and it's a really great point to close on, because actually we know that by practicing gratitude, you can have lasting effects for over 6 months. So who doesn't want to feel a little bit more happier and get more life satisfaction? And if somebody tells you something and you sort of think, oh, I don't know, I always say, what's the worst that could happen? That's right. What's the worst that could happen? You don't like it? Okay, you haven't lost anything. Yeah. But I'm yet to find somebody who hasn't benefited from all of those approaches. We'd like to thank you for your time today. We hope that you've got a lot of information out of our session. We would like to leave you with some information on the website. You can get in contact at info@apprenticeshipsupport.com.au. And if you'd like to know anything else about the State of Mind program with the NRL, you can get in contact. Yeah, we've got a great website, so jump online and you'll see links to all those service providers, some videos and helpful tips and stories, so it's pretty good. Okay, so we've had some questions come through, and the first question is, what happens if someone tries to have a conversation with either an apprentice or a young person at work and that person just will not open up and closes down? I'm sure you've had that situation before in some of the work that you've been doing. What's your advice? I think if we're trying some of the things we talked about today in creating that right environment to have a conversation, to being open, non-judgmental with that person, potentially sharing some things about yourself or some other people who may have experienced similar things to that person, where appropriate. I think if we've tried all those things, we just highlight the support service they do have available. So whether it's an employee assistance program, whether it's a headspace, depending on their age, those sorts of things. And some of those subtle things that happen that we talked about earlier, where we may not think we're getting through to them, but we really are, or we've sparked something inside of them or changed their thought patterns about something. Don't be surprised if it is having effect and you don't feel it is. But go through those steps and see how we go. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think as well, sometimes people might not be ready to talk yet. Yeah. But just knowing that the employer is available or whatever that person is. So just sort of saying, you don't have to say anything now, but if you are ready to talk at a later stage, just know I'm here. Yeah. And, you could also, I think a lot of organisations that I've observed have also set up more of a mentoring scheme. Almost informally, because, as you spoke about before, sometimes young people or anybody is scared to disclose something to their boss or decision maker. Yep. So having somebody else in the business even ask, are they okay, could also help. Yeah, we recommend that at the junior football clubs we talk to. If a coach of a particular team thinks that team needs a bit more support, or an individual in that team needs more support, and they don't feel comfortable having that conversation, bring in somebody else, bring in the headspaces and those types of organisations who can talk to the team as a whole and effectively talk to that individual as well. So there's a few different things you can try there. And you mentioned as well before in the conversation EAP services. So I guess a reminder for any employers who are listening today, if you don't know that much information about your EAP services, find out all the information that you need to know, the phone numbers, what they do, what the employees have access to, and make it visible in the business. Put it on the fridge, on the office doors, all those sorts of places, in the bathrooms. I know at the NRL we have a fantastic employee assistance program where the players get around, I think it's 6 free psychology sessions per year. That's not just for themselves, that can be for their wife, their parents, their brother or sister, those sorts of people. And then moving into retirement as well, they're still supported by that program for the next couple of years after they retire. Yeah, and it's amazing how many people don't know enough about their EAP service. Yeah. So that might be an action for people listening today to go and find out a bit more about that. And another question that we have coming through is around mindfulness and meditation. So
what if I can't meditate? And I've had a lot of people say that to me, that meditating actually makes them feel more anxious, and they can't do that. So what strategies have you used?
Well, I've definitely been there. I empathise with you there. I know a lot of apps. You mentioned the Smiling Mind one. That's actually one I've used a lot myself as well. They actually start from right at the beginning as a beginner, all the way through to an expert, which I'm not quite there yet.
I love the growth mindset.
And so the beginners one sometimes go for a minute. And in saying that, a minute isn't all that that long for an experienced person, but for a new person doing it, it's a really long time. Sometimes after 5 or 10 seconds, you're trying to self-regulate through your breath, but you're already thinking about what else I've got on today. So I definitely understand that it's hard, but I'd probably say stick with it too. If you can get out 2 deep breaths without thinking about anything else, then try for a third until you get to 10, and all of a sudden that might be a minute's worth of meditation or mindfulness practices. But there's definitely other things we can do, and listening to music, going for a run, all those sorts of things.
And, we have spoken about Smiling Minds a few times, but I guess the benefit of that is it's guided. When you're listening to a guided meditation, the voice is telling you what to focus on. So that's a way of sort of training your brain. Well, I think we're out of time. It's been wonderful speaking with you today, and thank you for the questions. Sorry if we haven't got to your question. We'll endeavour to get back to that in our follow-up. Thank you very much for your time, and we hope you can take some positive things away from the session.
Thank you.